What happens when the owner of a 16-location café chain disguises himself as a customer and catches a cashier lying to a kid's face? Brayden Langley stood in front of the mirror in his downtown apartment, tugging the edges of a worn hoodie down over his plain T-shirt. A pair of thick glasses, some light stubble, a baseball cap, and a nervous posture completed the look. He looked nothing like the man who ran the café chain his father had built from scratch over 3 decades ago. He had inherited the company 5 years back. Since then, he'd expanded it to 16 stores across 3 cities. Most were doing well, or so he thought. But over the past 3 months, complaints had started trickling in. Nothing major, just a few bad reviews here and there, mostly about service. He tried to brush them off, but something kept nagging at him. He hadn't set foot inside any of the cafes in over a year, not since opening the new headquarters. His face wasn't recognizable to most of the frontline workers. Corporate handled hiring. Store-level staff knew the district manager, not the guy at the top, so today he was going in as just another customer. The cafe he picked was on the east side of town, store number 11. It was a small location tucked between a laundromat and a pet supply store. It had decent traffic, mostly students and locals. On paper, it looked fine. But the last 3 online reviews mentioned rude service and weird pricing. Brayden walked in around 3:30 in the afternoon. The place was quiet. A few people were typing on laptops. A high school girl in a marching band hoodie sat near the window, sipping water. The cashier, a tall guy with a shaved head and a bored expression, stood behind the register scrolling on his phone. Brayden got in line behind a teenage boy who had just walked up. "Hey, the boy mumbled, pulling out a few crumpled bills. "How much is the grilled cheese combo?" The cashier barely looked up. $8.75. The boy's eyes flicked to the menu board. "It says $6.50, the cashier shrugged. "That's the old price." "It went up last week." The boy hesitated, then started counting his money again. "I only have 6. Can I just get the sandwich?" "No," the cashier said flatly. "Combo only. You can't order it separate anymore." Brayden froze. That was a lie. He personally remembered signing off on keeping the sandwich as a standalone because of affordability. He stepped back and checked the sign himself. It still clearly listed the sandwich alone at $4.25. The kid looked embarrassed as he stepped aside. "Okay." "Sorry," Brayden stepped up next. "Yeah," the cashier said without looking up. "I'll take the grilled cheese combo, $9, the cashier said. Brayden stared at him. "Pretty sure it's $6.50, the cashier sighed and finally looked up. "You want it or not?" Brayden gave him a calm smile. "I'll take just the sandwich. $4.25, right?" Now the cashier looked annoyed. "Who are you, the menu police?" Brayden handed over exact change, took his receipt, and stepped aside. He watched as the teenage boy quietly left the store without ordering anything. He sat down at a corner table and didn't touch his food. He stayed for another hour, watching. The cashier name tag said Ty continued acting like every customer was a problem. He rolled his eyes, gave short answers, and ignored people waiting in line while he checked his phone. When an older woman asked about a drink she'd never tried before, Ty just told her to Google it. At 4:30, a young woman came out from the back. She had curly hair tied up in a bun and wore a faded apron. She glanced around the cafe, then at the small line forming again. "Ty," she said, "you were supposed to start dishes 20 minutes ago." "I'm covering front. Figure it out," he muttered. She didn't argue. She just grabbed a bucket and disappeared into the back. Brayden watched her go, noticing how the moment she left, Ty went back to scrolling. By 5, Brayden had seen enough. He took a napkin, scribbled down a quick note, and tucked it under his untouched sandwich. Then he walked out. His hands were shaking slightly, and he wasn't sure if it was anger or disappointment. He got into his car, pulled off the cap, and exhaled. Tomorrow he was coming back. Not as a customer, as the owner. By 8 the next morning, Brayden was already parked a block from the cafe, dressed in the same hoodie and cap. This time, though, he carried a small black backpack and a folder of hiring paperwork inside. 2 days ago, he'd quietly asked HR to create a new entry-level training profile for a Brayden Langley, a 28-year-old job hopper looking to get back on his feet. The East Side location had been short-staffed for weeks, so when the request came through, no one questioned it. He walked in 10 minutes before open. The lights were already on and the front counter was dimly lit by the glow of the pastry case. A woman in her early 60s stood behind it, adjusting the register drawer. Her gray hair was pulled into a tight ponytail and her posture was stiff but precise. "You the new guy?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah," Brayden nodded. "Connie," she said, finally glancing at him. "I open most mornings. You're shadowing today. Let's get your apron." He followed her to the back, where a small break room sat wedged between dry storage and the dish pit. Connie handed him a navy blue apron and pointed to the time clock. He scanned the fake badge HR had set up for him. It beeped green. He was in. The kitchen was already humming. A stocky cook named Lewis was prepping breakfast wraps. He gave Brayden a quick nod, then went back to scrambling eggs. Everything moved with quiet routine, efficient if a little tired. At 8 sharp, the doors opened. A slow trickle of regulars came in, an older man with a crossword puzzle tucked under his arm, a pair of nurses from the nearby clinic, a young mom juggling a toddler. Brayden stayed behind the counter, watching. Connie handled the register with steady rhythm, greeting each customer by name. She moved slower than some of the younger employees he'd seen at other cafes, but there wasn't a wasted motion. She smiled, offered suggestions, and made eye contact with everyone. At 9:15, Ty arrived. He walked in 10 minutes late, AirPods in, sipping from a convenience store coffee cup. He didn't greet anyone, just dropped his backpack on a back stool, grabbed an apron from the wall, and slid behind the counter. "You're late," Connie said, not looking up from the espresso machine. Ty pulled one earbud out. "Traffic." Again, he didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at Brayden. "Who's this? New hire, training today." "Great," Ty said flatly. He leaned against the counter and pulled out his phone. "Just what we needed." Connie glanced over. "We actually do. I'm scheduled until noon and Morgan called out sick." Ty didn't respond. He stayed on his phone until a customer approached. Then, with visible reluctance, he stepped toward the register. Brayden moved closer to the prep station, where a young woman with a bandana tied around her head was wiping down the counter. She looked up and offered a small nod. "Hey." "I'm Ray," she said quietly. "Bray, you new?" "Yeah, first day." She glanced toward Ty. "Lucky you." Brayden kept his voice low. "He always like that." Ray hesitated. "Depends who's around, but yeah, mostly." A customer interrupted them, asking for a veggie breakfast wrap without cheese. Ray nodded, started assembling it with quick hands. Brayden offered to help wrap, and she showed him how to fold the paper and tuck the edges. By 10, the cafe had filled up. A college group took over the long table near the window. A woman with a stroller struggled to find space between chairs. Orders started stacking up on the screen. Ty stayed at the register but didn't call out names or check with the kitchen. When one customer politely asked if her latte was coming soon, he waved vaguely toward the back. Brayden stepped in, taking over drink prep. Connie had moved to restocking pastries and was clearly trying to keep pace with the rush. Ray floated between the sandwich station and the pastry case, filling in wherever she could. Ty didn't move from his spot. At 10:30, the tension finally cracked. A tall man in a construction vest stepped up to the counter. His forehead was shiny with sweat, and he looked like he'd just come off a site. "Hey, I ordered 2 burritos and a large iced coffee like 15 minutes ago." Ty didn't look up. "Yeah, it's coming." The man waited a beat. "You said that 5 minutes ago." "It's a busy morning. I can refund you if you don't want to wait." The man blinked. "No, I want my food." Brayden stepped forward, holding the wrapped burritos. "These ready?" Ray nodded. "Just finished." Brayden handed them over with the iced coffee. "Sorry for the delay. Here you go." The man gave him a nod, then glanced at Ty. "Might want to work on the attitude, buddy." Ty rolled his eyes after the door closed. Guy's sweating through his shirt and he wants to talk about attitude. Connie turned sharply. Watch it? Ty looked at her like she just said something in another language. What? You heard me, he scoffed and walked toward the back. Taking my break. You haven't covered anyone else's yet, Connie called after him. Bray hasn't even had one. Not my problem, Ty muttered, disappearing into the back room. Brayden stood frozen for a second. Ray shook her head and went back to slicing bread. By 11, the rush had died down. Connie leaned against the counter, rubbing her wrists. You doing okay? Brayden asked. She nodded. Just tired. Been doing opens 5 days a week. Why? Because no one else will. Morgan's been calling out a lot. Ty won't do mornings. Ray's part-time. Brayden looked around. So it's mostly just you and Ray holding this together? Connie didn't answer right away. Lewis does what he can, but yeah, most of the time. He watched her shuffle toward the cooler to refill the milk jugs. At noon, Connie clocked out and gave Brayden a quick wave. Good luck. You'll need it. Ty returned 10 minutes later, still on his phone. Ray gave him a look. That was an hour, he shrugged. No one stopped me. Brayden stepped closer to Ray. Does that happen a lot? She gave a tired laugh. You mean him taking breaks that last longer than my entire shift? Yeah, why hasn't anyone said anything? People have, she said. District manager came once, but Ty cleaned up his act just long enough to look good, then went right back to it. What about HR? She wiped her hands and leaned on the counter. HR doesn't answer when you're just a part-time barista making $13 an hour. Brayden felt something tighten in his chest. At one, a middle-aged woman came in with a service dog. The line was short, but Ty still looked irritated when she approached. Can I help you? Hi, she said warmly. Can I get a turkey pesto and a decaf latte? He rang it up without speaking. When she handed over her card, he glanced at the dog. You can't have that in here. It's a service animal. Still, health codes. It's federal law. He's allowed in public spaces. Ty rolled his eyes. Whatever. Just stay out of the way. Brayden stepped forward. I'll handle this order. He walked her drink over personally and apologized. She gave him a grateful nod and sat quietly near the window. When he turned back, Ty was already muttering under his breath. Brayden didn't say anything. Yet. He waited until the shift change at 3. Ray was packing up her things, eyes heavy. Thanks for showing me the ropes, he said. She smiled faintly. You weren't bad. You should stick around. I might. Just watch your back, she said, nodding toward the counter. Ty was leaning on the register again, phone in hand. Brayden walked into the back, took off his apron, and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number he hadn't called in over a year. Melissa, he said when the district manager answered. I need you at East Side. Now. The district manager arrived just after 3:30, her heels clicking sharply against the tile as she stepped through the front door. Melissa Pine was tall, blunt, and always 10 minutes early to everything, but this time she'd rushed. Brayden had made it clear over the phone it wasn't a routine visit. She scanned the cafe quickly, then caught sight of Brayden leaning by the pastry case. He gave the smallest nod. She walked past him without a word, heading straight to the back. Ty didn't notice. He was too busy talking to someone on speakerphone behind the counter, laughing about a concert he'd gone to the night before. The few customers still lingering in the cafe looked over uncomfortably, but he didn't lower his voice. Melissa stepped back out, clipboard in hand. She stood still for a moment watching Ty talk, then she spoke. Tyler, he turned, blinked. Oh, hey Melissa, she said nothing, just gestured toward the back. Yeah, sure. He followed her, still holding his phone. She stopped just inside the doorway. Give me the phone. He hesitated. It's just now. He handed it over. She ended the call and set the phone on the counter. Brayden followed behind them and closed the door. Ty looked between them, confused. What's going on? Brayden stepped forward and pulled off the cap. Then the glasses. Ty's face drained of color. You've been working with me for 2 days, Brayden said. You didn't recognize the person who signs your paycheck. Ty didn't speak. Melissa looked at Brayden. You want me to run it, or are you taking the lead? I'll handle it, Brayden said, then turned to Ty. Let's start with yesterday. You told a kid we don't sell the grilled cheese sandwich by itself. That was a lie. Ty opened his mouth. Don't explain, Brayden cut in. You didn't just lie. You tried to take advantage of someone who clearly didn't have enough money. You embarrassed him. That's not just bad service. That's manipulative. Ty shifted his weight. I didn't think it was a big deal. It's a big enough deal that I came back today. Ty looked at Melissa. Come on, Brayden spoke again. You ignored customers. You gave yourself an hour-long break while everyone else was scrambling. You made a woman with a service dog feel like she didn't belong here. And this isn't even about one bad day. I've been hearing about you for weeks. Melissa opened her clipboard. We've had 5 separate complaints about your attitude in the last month. 2 of them mentioned you by name. I checked. You didn't report any of them to me. Ty's voice was quieter now. I didn't think they were serious. Brayden stepped closer. You've been hiding behind the fact that no one's watching, but I watched. I watched you treat people like they were intrusions. I watched you let your coworkers carry twice the weight while you stood around. Ty looked at the floor. You're done here, Brayden said. Effective immediately. Ty's head snapped up. What? Wait, we're not giving warnings to people who lie to customers and disrespect their teammates. We're not keeping employees who treat service dogs like pests and take breaks while others skip theirs. Melissa nodded. You can clock out now. Your final check will be processed by the end of the week. I'll need your keys and apron. Ty looked like he was going to argue again, but the expression on Brayden's face stopped him. He reached behind his neck, untied the apron, and handed it over stiffly. Then he pulled a key from his pocket and set it on the counter. He didn't say goodbye. Just walked out the back door. Melissa closed her clipboard. I'll get a temp from another store to help Ray close tonight, but we need to talk about the rest. Brayden nodded. Let's go back out. They stepped into the café together. Ray was cleaning the espresso machine. Lewis was boxing up the remaining muffins. Both of them looked up. Brayden called softly, Could I talk to you two for a second? They gathered near the back counter. Ray looked cautious. Lewis wiped his hands on a towel and stood silently beside her. Ty's been let go, Brayden said. Effective immediately, Ray blinked. Seriously, Lewis didn't say anything, just exhaled slowly. Brayden continued. I came in yesterday as a customer. What I saw wasn't acceptable, and what I saw today confirmed it, but it also showed me something else. He looked at Ray. You held this place together. You managed prep, orders, and cleanup without ever raising your voice. You didn't complain when you were asked to do more than your share. Ray looked down. Brayden turned to Lewis. You've been consistent. Even when things weren't fair. Lewis nodded slightly but said nothing. Brayden looked at both of them. This café shouldn't be running on the backs of 2 people. That ends today. Melissa stepped forward. We're restructuring the schedule. Starting tomorrow, Connie will work 4-day weeks and only open twice. Ray, if you're willing, we're offering you a full-time position with benefits and a raise. Lewis, you'll get 2 kitchen assistants rotating through the week. One of them's already trained from store 9. Ray blinked. Wait, full-time? Brayden nodded. You've earned it. Lewis asked quietly, Who's managing now? Melissa answered, Until we find a new lead, I'll be on site twice a week, and Brayden's going to stay involved. Ray gave Brayden a long look. You really just walked in like a trainee? I needed to see it for myself. I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand behind the line. She smiled, just barely. You picked a rough spot. That's why I came here, Lewis finally spoke. Most bosses don't, Brayden nodded. That's why I'm changing how this works. From now on, every café will rotate through anonymous check-ins, not to catch people, to learn, but the moment someone crosses the line like Ty did, we won't wait 3 months to act. Ray turned to Melissa. Does this mean no more covering for people like him? Melissa looked her in the eye. No more, you report it, I respond. Brayden looked around the café. This place deserves honesty, not just with customers, with each other. That's how we rebuild the culture my father started. He turned back to Ray and Lewis. Thank you for holding on longer than you should have had to. Ray shook her head. I didn't expect any of this. Brayden smiled. Neither did I. Not until I saw it for myself. Melissa checked her clipboard again. I'll send updated schedules by tonight. Ray, if you accept full-time, orientation's Friday. Lewis, your support staff starts Monday. Brayden stepped back, watching them return to work. Nothing had magically fixed. There was still a gap in staff, a long day ahead. But for the first time in months, the cafe felt like it could breathe, and he wasn't just watching anymore. He was in it. The following Monday, Brayden returned to the East Side Cafe just before 7 in the morning. No hoodie. No glasses. No disguise. He wore a clean button-up and jeans rolled at the cuffs, his hair still damp from the early shower. He didn't walk in with a clipboard or anyone trailing behind him, just a coffee in one hand and a notepad in the other. Connie was already behind the counter, restocking the cold case with small containers of yogurt parfait. She looked up when the bell chimed and gave a nod, not one of recognition, but routine. Brayden stepped up to the bar and waited until she turned. "Good morning," he said. "It's Brayden Langley." She paused, her hand still holding a container above the shelf. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not suspicious, just processing, then she stood up straight. "I heard about Friday," she said. "Didn't expect you'd be back." "I said I would," he replied. "I meant it." She nodded once, then pointed toward the back. "We've got a stool if you want to sit, or you here to work," he smiled. "Just observing, listening, not disappearing this time." She didn't ask what that meant. By 7:30, the first wave hit. 2 nurses from the clinic, a city bus driver, and a high school teacher who ordered the same oatmeal every morning. Ray arrived at 7:45, apron already tied, earbuds tucked away. She greeted customers by name and gave Connie a small squeeze on the shoulder in passing. Brayden made a note. She'd accepted the full-time position. That mattered. At 8:15, Melissa arrived with a clipboard and a tired smile. She caught his eye and leaned in. "New assistant manager from store 9 starts Thursday," she said. "Name's Janelle, strong record. Took on 2 underperforming stores last year and turned both around." "Good," Brayden said. "Let her know I'll be stopping bi-weekly for the first month." Melissa nodded. "Also, Ray's enrolled in the leadership track." She said yes. That stopped him. "She did?" Melissa lowered her voice. Didn't even hesitate. By 9, the cafe moved with quiet momentum. No one was rushing, but no one stood still either. Orders went out on time. Drinks were called out clearly. The espresso machine hissed, the register beeped softly, and the scent of toasted bread hung in the air. Brayden sat near the corner, unnoticed by most, just scribbling observations. At 9:25, a woman walked in with 2 young kids, both under 5. One clung to her leg, the other held a crayon-scribbled drawing. They approached the counter together. Connie bent forward at the waist, smiling. "Hey there, artists, you drawing breakfast today?" The younger child held up the paper and Connie gasped theatrically. "This is better than half the murals in this city," she said. The woman looked relieved just to be acknowledged kindly. She placed the order, a single bagel and 2 hot chocolates. Brayden stepped up beside her just as she reached for her wallet. "It's on me," he said. She blinked. "I what?" He offered a small wave. "Consider it a thank you." "You just made our morning better." She hesitated, then accepted it with a quiet smile and a nod. As she left with the kids, Ray leaned across the counter. "She comes in once a week, never orders more than 1 item, always splits it between the 2. Brayden didn't write anything down. Some things didn't need to be recorded. At 10, Lewis pushed through the back door, his apron already dusted with flour. He gave a short wave and went straight to the prep line. Melissa greeted him with a knuckle-tap brief, efficient, and handed over the updated food safety logs. Then, something unexpected. Ray came forward holding a small box. "Morning shipment came with an extra crate of pastries," she said. "Someone messed up the count." Brayden raised an eyebrow. "First day on full time and already reporting inventory issues," Ray shrugged. "Might as well start strong." Brayden took the box, peeked inside, then turned to Melissa. "Let's start a new policy," he said. "If we get overages within reason, they go to the community fridge up the street, that one near the library." Melissa nodded immediately. No waste, Ray added. Better than day-olds getting tossed. They both agreed. At 10:45, Brayden stepped outside for some air. The sidewalk was quiet, the breeze cool for late spring. He leaned against the building, watching the small line form again. A man in a maintenance uniform passed by, then stopped. "Hey," he said, looking Brayden up and down. "You're the guy from the news thing last year, about the expansion, right?" Brayden smiled faintly. "Yeah, that was me," the man nodded. "Didn't think you'd be standing outside your own café." "Trying to remember what it feels like," Brayden said. "Feels like coffee and underpaid mornings," the man replied, then laughed. "Still, place looks better than last time I came. That's the goal." The man gave a two-finger salute and kept walking. Brayden stepped back inside. By 11:30, the pace had slowed again. Ray was reviewing the afternoon schedule. Connie was prepping an extra batch of cold brew. Louis was slicing tomatoes, earbuds in, humming something under his breath. Brayden walked over to the counter and waited until Ray looked up. "Got a minute," she nodded, pulled off her gloves and followed him to a side table. He sat across from her. "I want to be honest about something," Brayden said. "When I came in last week, I wasn't sure what I was going to find. I thought maybe the bigger problem was the system. Maybe we'd grown too fast." "Was it the system?" Ray asked. "Part of it, but most of it was trust. We put people in charge who didn't earn it, and we didn't listen when others tried to speak up." She folded her arms. "Some people did speak up, they were told to adjust." "I know," he said. "That's not happening again." She studied him for a moment. "Why'd you come here first?" He paused. "Because this store had the quietest numbers, not the worst, just flat. No growth, no drops, like it was holding on without moving forward. That usually means someone's doing more than they should and not getting credit for it." Ray tilted her head. "That's pretty specific. My dad used to say the worst stores scream, the best ones hum, but the ones you worry about, they whisper." She didn't answer right away. Then she looked toward the counter where Connie was wiping down a tray. "So what now?" Ray asked. "You visit every store every week." "No," Brayden said. "Not every week, but I'll be around, not as a mystery shopper. As a leader who remembers what the floor feels like." She nodded, then stood. "Better bring gloves next time," she said. "Morning prep's brutal," he grinned. Duly noted. By noon, Brayden packed up his notes and stood near the front door. Melissa walked over, arms crossed. "You staying for lunch?" He shook his head. "I've got 3 more stops today," she raised an eyebrow. "You're doing a full loop?" "Not every day, but enough." Melissa looked toward the back. "They're going to talk, word's going to spread." "Good," he said. "Let it." She leaned in. "You sure you're ready for that kind of transparency?" Brayden looked around the cafe. Not ready, committed. He stepped outside, the door swinging shut behind him, the faint bell echoing once. Inside, the cafe didn't pause. Orders kept coming. Drinks kept steaming. And for the first time in a long while, everything felt like it was moving forward. No disguises. No guessing. Just people doing the work, and someone finally watching for the right reasons.